everyone, it has been a while. I haven't done any book reviews for a while, but the sister of an author that I reviewed last year approached me and asked me to review her book, and so here it is. It's called Big Sky, and it's written by Sharon Farritor Raimondo. She's a sister of Sharon Farritor, who wrote what I consider actually the best book I read last year, End of Twilight. End of Pawnee Twilight. And this one, while Sean wrote about the Midwest history, this is also Midwest history, and in both cases they're novels, not history books, but they take a story from history and they dramatize it, essentially. This is, I believe, from a fictional family, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was from relatives of hers, because she's from Nebraska, or I believe lives there. Anyway, fourth generation Nebraskan, as it says in the back of the book. The thing about the book is it feels very real. It feels very much like people from the Sandhills of Nebraska, which is what the story is about. My own heritage goes back to the Sandhills of Nebraska, and the places she talks about I'm familiar with. I actually know them quite well, probably in the same way she knows them from family talking about them, living there in the 20s and 30s, and that sort of thing. The story, essentially the book is, this is the cover by the way, and clever thing that she does here, she has a bookmark of the same type with information for getting it. This is, for getting the book and following her, and all that sort of thing. I recommend this kind of a suggestion idea for independent authors. Get one of these, and of course always hand them out at events or whatever, and give them away with your books. I actually sometimes forget to do that myself. Anyway, what it does actually, not only but of course one says, one might think, well, hey, the person already owns the book. If they've got the bookmark with the book, why do they need more information? Or if they've got the book, why do they need a bookmark with the information of the book? And the reason is because of what she has on the back. It has basically how to follow her and all that sort of thing. Plus, of course, other people will see the bookmark. It reminds them of it. They might leave the book behind but have the bookmark, etc. So anyway, it's not so much of a specific story. How a lot of stories are this one specific story, this one group of events. This is almost more of a few years in the life of kind of thing. It reminds me of Willa Cather. If you've ever read any of her writings, I mean, first of all, of course, it's in the same area. It's very clearly inspired by the same type of thing. But even if this book happened somewhere completely different, because Willa Cather's stories happen in the Sandhills as well. But even if this book had happened somewhere else other than the Sandhills, I'd still be comparing it to Willa Cather, because it has that same kind of feel. It's much more literate. It's much more about the descriptions than it is about the specific story. And the lives of the people, it isn't, yes, there are events that happen, but there's not as much of a specific through line. It's more like, there's one character who's a little bit more important than the others, and it sort of follows that person's through line, that person's story. But there isn't one specific event, per se. It's just kind of, these lives, and you're supposed to get a sense of what this person's, what this family's life is like during this period. And it's during the time, not only of the Depression. First of all, it starts off in the 20s, before the Depression, and it's almost like what the Midwest was, or it almost sort of shows how the Midwest was still kind of the Old West in a way. I shouldn't say almost shows it. It really shows that even though we were living in a time of cars and modernization, in the 20s, there were certain areas of the country, particularly the Midwest, a place like western Nebraska, where the Sandhills are, where modernization hadn't caught up yet, and a lot of people are riding around on horses and just sort of living, similar to the Old West. The Old West is in the process of fading away. But then you have the Great Depression comes along, and people are struggling, but also you end up having a lot of the Dust Bowl issues coming along, and huge clouds of dust. Just gigantic dust storms that cover everything. And these people have to live through those. There is a specific difficulty that ends up happening between two of the characters. I don't want to give that away because it kind of, in my opinion, was sort of a surprise. I didn't expect it to happen until it did, and then it ended up being a huge part of the story. But I feel like I would be giving spoilers to tell that part. But anyway, that ends up being kind of a big through line It's John, who's the main character, and his relationship with one of the other family members. My, I don't really have a difficulty with this per se. I mean, I have a personal difficulty in, not difficulty, just less interest, because it's very much based on religious. It's a very religious kind of book. It's not a religious book per se in that it's trying to preach to you, but the characters are very religious, which is, the way a lot of people are, and it's very realistic in that sense. It feels, very much like the author feels that way too, which there is no problem with that. That's why I say it's not really a problem. Just I'm not, and so, it wasn't something that would interest me so much in that regard. But one really can't review a book based on whether or not you're personally interested in that kind of subject matter. It's got to be based on the skill. The skill of this is very good. In particular, like I say, the language is very good, and I really would compare Sharon Farritor Raimondo's writing style to Willa Cather, because it really does have that feel. And I wonder if it has something to do with Western Nebraska that brings that out of a person. Because in my one book that I'm going to start doing, it's more about the literature. I'm trying to use Willa Cather as the example. But anyway, so and I'm trying to use like Western Nebraska kind of as the example. So I don't know. It has to do with that kind of quiet beauty of of Western Nebraska. But like, for instance, anyway, back to sort of the religious aspect. Every chapter begins with a Bible verse. All the characters are very religious. There are entire paragraphs that are just somebody's prayer, which that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it, and if you're into it, you're going to like that more. I'm pointing that out because if you're somebody who likes that, you're going to like it more. But if you're someone like me, who's more agnostic, it's going to be like, okay, let's get past that. But it's not that it's unrealistic, and it's not that it's unskillful. It's very skillful. In fact, the writing is very skillfully done. So anyway, that's it. Big Sky. Find it now. Amazon or wherever you're gonna go shopping. I know it's on Amazon. I know it's available on Kindle. I'm not 100% certain about where else. As you know, independent books are sometimes difficult to find, certainly in terms of bookstores. But you definitely can find this one. I'll try to get some more up, and in the meantime, read more independent books.